Iran just rejected the second round of peace talks. The ones that were supposed to happen this week in Pakistan. Flat out rejected. And in the same broadcast, someone casually dropped the possibility of the US seizing Karg Island, Iran's main oil export terminal. If you don't know what that means yet, stay with me. You're about to. Iran just rejected peace talks. The ceasefire is expiring. A US destroyer already blew a hole in one of their ships. And now a Fox News military analyst just suggested America might need to physically occupy Iran's most important oil island. This is where we are. Let's get into it. Iran just rejected the talks. Not delayed them. Not asked for different terms. Rejected them through state media. And the host's reaction is basically, probably just saber-rattling. They'll come around. Which, maybe. Iran does this. We've talked about it. Push, pull, test, retreat. It's a pattern. But here's what's different this time. A US Navy destroyer just shot a hole in one of their ships 48 hours ago. Marines boarded it. The ceasefire is expiring in days. And Iran's response to all of that is to publicly reject the next round of talks. That's not saber-rattling. That's either a negotiating position being played very hard, or someone in Tehran making a decision that's about to have serious consequences. Which one is it? Nobody actually knows right now. And that uncertainty is exactly what makes this moment dangerous. Stop right there. You do not beg for peace. You create conditions where peace is the cheapest option for your enemy. That is one of the cleanest articulations of coercive diplomacy I've heard on cable news in years. And it's not just a talking point. It's actually the strategic logic behind everything happening right now. The blockade isn't punishment. It's pricing. They're making war more expensive than a deal. Every ship turned around, every barrel of oil that doesn't move, every day the Iranian economy bleeds. That's the negotiating pressure. The boarding operation wasn't aggression. It was proof of concept. Here's my issue, though. That strategy works when the other side is rational and calculating costs. What happens if the new Iranian leadership has hardliners who'd rather burn the whole thing down than sign a deal that looks like surrender? Cost calculation breaks down when pride and ideology enter the room. And Iran just rejected the talks. So either they're still calculating, or they've already made a different kind of decision. Global operations targeting Iranian oil vessels. Not just in the Gulf. Not just in the Strait. Globally. That's a massive expansion of scope if it actually happens. Right now, the blockade is a regional enforcement operation in a specific waterway. Going global means hunting shadow fleet tankers in the Indian Ocean, the South China Sea, the Mediterranean, wherever Iranian oil is moving through illicit networks. And the shadow fleet, we've mentioned this before. These are the ghost ships. No clear ownership. Flags changing constantly. Carrying sanctioned Iranian oil to buyers who don't want anyone to know they're buying it. China buys a lot of Iranian oil through exactly these networks. Russia uses similar systems. If the US starts intercepting those vessels globally, that's not just a conflict with Iran anymore. That's a direct confrontation with the economic interests of two nuclear powers. When you cut off the money, the missiles get quieter is true. It's also the kind of operation that creates consequences way beyond the Gulf region. Somebody in that building better be thinking about the second and third order effects here. A blockade that isn't enforced is just a suggestion. That's actually a really important point that gets lost in all the debate about whether boarding ships is too aggressive. Because if you declare a blockade and then back down every time someone tests it, you haven't just lost that encounter. You've told every ship, every regime, every sanctions evader in the world that the blockade is optional, that there are no real consequences, that American red lines are negotiable. 13 ships turned around without a shot fired. One didn't. And that one got a hole blown in its engine room and Marines on its deck. That's the message. Comply or face it. The question nobody's asking is, what happens when it's not a ghost fleet tanker testing the blockade? What happens when it's a ship with a crew that fights back? What happens when Iran fires a coastal missile at the next destroyer that boards one of theirs? The escalation ladder has more rungs than this broadcast is acknowledging. And we just climbed one. Karg Island. Let me explain what that actually is, because the way it got dropped into this conversation deserved way more than a 30-second closer. Karg Island is where approximately 90% of Iran's oil exports originate. It's not just strategically important, it's the economic heart of the Iranian state. The IRGC, Hezbollah, every proxy Iran funds, every missile program, every drone factory, all of it traces back financially to the oil that moves through Karg. The host just said he thinks physically seizing Karg Island is a high probability outcome. Not an airstrike. Seizure. Occupation. Boots on the ground on Iranian sovereign territory. That's not a blockade anymore. That's a land operation. That's regime threatening. That's the kind of move that could trigger every Iranian proxy across the Middle East simultaneously: Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon. And it got mentioned as a casual closing thought after a 6-minute Fox News segment. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but the fact that a former Special Ops Intel analyst and a Fox News host are treating it as likely on live television tells you how far this conversation has moved in the last 2 weeks. Here's the real picture underneath all the military terminology and strategic framing. Iran rejected the talks. The ceasefire is expiring. A ship already got boarded. Operations are potentially expanding globally. And 2 people on Fox News just had a casual conversation about whether America needs to physically occupy Iran's main oil island. 6 months ago, that last sentence would have seemed completely unhinged. Today, it's a segment closer. The administration's strategy is real and it has logic. Make peace cheaper than war. Enforce every line you draw. Cut the money flow. That's coherent. But coherent strategies can still produce outcomes nobody planned for. Every escalation ladder looks manageable until someone misreads a signal or makes a decision under pressure that can't be walked back. Iran rejected the talks today. What they do tomorrow is the whole question. So I want to know, do you think Karg Island actually gets seized? Because if it does, nothing about this situation looks the same anymore. Drop it in the comments. Paste directly into your TTS AI. No words changed.